Oi Caveboy Chapter 10. In Chapter 9, Iggy and Hubba had managed to escape from the No-Necks by building themselves a kind of skateboard type raft which took them down onto the river. Chapter 10. A Hero's Welcome. Iggy woke up. Something felt different. The birds were singing. The river was babbling quietly, and Ummerly, the chief's daughter, was stroking his hair. Hold on, he thought. The last time I looked, Ummerly wasn't on the log at all. And another thing, the log is no longer rocking and lurching, as if it might capsize at any moment. He opened his eyes and blinked at the bright sunlight. The soft hand stroking his hair was a willow tree trailing its branches in the river. Evidently the log must have got tangled in it the previous night. "Hubba!" said Iggy. "Hubba, wake up!" "Ah!" Hubba raised his head. He stood up quickly, forgetting that he was on a floating log, and promptly overbalanced with a splash. He bobbed up, gasping for air and wearing a crown of green weed. Once they had made it to the bank, they looked around. It all looked strangely familiar. "This is just like the Valley of Urk," said Iggy. "And them woods are like Forest of Urk," said Hubba, pointing. "And look up there. Aren't those our caves?" "Hubba, you know what this means?" "Somewhere else looks just like our valley?" "No, we're home. The river has carried us home." The two of them whooped and hugged and danced for joy. Then Hugger pushed Iggy in the river just because he wasn't very wet, and they both splashed water over each other. Finally they remembered that they had urgent business and climbed the hill to the caves above. Iggy couldn't wait to see his mum and dad, to tell them of his adventures. "Wait till they see us," he said. "We'll probably get a hero's welcome." Further up the hill, Dad had just managed to get the fire going. Mum emerged from the cave and rubbed her face wearily. They crouched beside the flames for a while, warming themselves in the cool morning air. I keep thinking maybe he'll turn up," said Mum mournfully. Dad shook his head. "For Urk's sake, it's been days. You has to try and forget." "Poor little scroggler," cried Mum. "I miss him." "I miss him too," said Dad. "I even miss all them dungful questions he used to ask." "And the things he were always bringing back, shells and feathers and scrubby old bones." A tear rolled down Mum's cheek and plopped in the dust. "Sometimes I imagine I can hear his voice." "Mum! Dad!" shouted Iggy from the bottom of the hill. "Yes, like that, clear as mud," said Dad. "Hello, Mum!" Dad stared. "You'd almost swear that were him." Mum stood up and clutched at her heart. "Maybe it's his spirit coming back," she gasped. "Where is everyone?" "Look!" cried Mum. "There, coming up the hill. It's him!" "For a spirit, he's proper wet," said Dad. "And look, he's with the spirit of Hubba." Iggy reached the cave and stood before them, pale and out of breath. Mum reached out a hand in wonder. "Speak, spirit," she breathed. "What is your message?" "It's me, Mum, Iggy." "Iggy, my Iggy. Alive?" "Yes!" Mum touched his face and hair to convince herself he was real. Then she swung her hand and clouted him on the ear. "Where have you been, you little scallywag? We thought you was dead!" "Ow!" cried Iggy, rubbing his ear. "It wasn't my fault. We got lost, and then we ran into No-Necks. But there isn't time to explain now. We need to see the chief."
"The chief?"
Dad shook his head.
"I'm afraid you've come too late."
"What do you mean?" said Iggy.
"He was took bad last night. They say he can't last much longer."
Iggy and Hubba hurried up the hill. As they drew near to the chief's cave, their ears were invaded by a terrible noise, as if 100 alley cats were practising the violin. A gaggle of ancient women with dirty faces and grey hair to their waists had gathered outside. Iggy recognised them as the Wailing Widows. Whenever someone in the tribe died, the widows hurried to the cave to weep and mourn outside. In Hammerhead's case, they'd obviously come early. There were 5 of them, wizened old witches who clawed at their fur and heaped dust and dirt on their heads. "Woe! Woe!" they wailed. "Woe to this day of sorrow!" "Sorry," said Iggy, trying to squeeze past. "I can see you're busy, but could we see the chief?" One of the old crones gripped him by the wrist and fixed him with a glassy stare. "Woe to the tribe of Urks!" she cried. "Woe to the sons and the sons of sons, and to the second cousins of the sons of sons!" "This is urgent," pleaded Iggy. "If we don't see the chief now, it might be too late." "For a day is coming," crooned the mad-eyed witch, "when tribe will rise against tribe and foe against foe. Then woe to the tribe of Urk, for they are lost, lost! Woe and thrice woe, and woe again for luck," chorused the widows. Withered hands pawed at Iggy's face and arms. He would have been trapped there for some time if Hubba hadn't grabbed his arm and yanked him inside the cave. "Oh, thanks," he panted. "That was turning ugly. Where's the chief?" Hammerhead was lying on his soft bed of furs. He looked like death, only with dirtier hair. His massive chest rose and fell with the raspy breath. Around him were heaped burial offerings brought by the Urks, flint heads, axes, and bits of carved bone. There were piles of hazelnuts and berries in case the chief got peckish in the afterlife. The cave was sour with the smell of sickness. Iggy stared. He'd always imagined his uncle was invincible, as solid as the standing stone, but now he looked frail and old. Hubba bent down to pick something off the floor. It was the body of a large black scorpion, minus its head. It seemed an odd gift to bring a dying chief. Hammerhead stirred and groaned, his cracked lips moving. Iggy bent closer. "It's Iggy, Uncle Ham. You remember? We brought you something." He reached inside his furs and brought out the purple stankwort. He'd got rather squashed and drooped limp as an old sock.
"That's her?"
asked Hubba, who'd never actually seen the plant.
We went all the way to the Farlands for that soggy old bogweed?"
"Gaga said it was powerful magic," said Iggy.
"Powerful smelly, if you ask me," replied Hubba. "How was he meant to eat her then?"
Iggy realised he hadn't given this any thought. Hammerhead looked too weak to chew anything. When he brought the stankwort near his lips, the chief jerked his head away as if he was going to bite him.
"That is some stink," marvelled Hubba. "He can smell her with his eyes closed."
Iggy heard raised voices outside the cave. They would have to act quickly. He found a shell full of rainwater and crushed the petals of the snakewort into it. Propping his uncle's head up, he trickled the liquid into his mouth a little at a time. Much of it dribbled into his beard, but some went down. Hammerhead spluttered and began to cough. Iggy waited for the plant to work his healing magic. Nothing happened. The chief's eyes remained closed, and his raspy breathing rose and fell. "Maybe we should leave him to rest," said Iggy. Outside the cave, a small crowd had gathered, with Borg and Snark at the front. Borg was flanked by 2 large Urks armed with spears. It didn't look like a welcome party. "So it's true, you're back," sneered Snark. He was wearing his wolf fang necklace to show he was now son of Urk.
"Who said you could enter the cave?" demanded Borg.
"No one," replied Iggy. "We needed to see the chief."
Borg laughed dryly. "The old chief, you mean? Or perhaps you hasn't heard? A few things have changed since you were away."
Borg was playing with a string of whalebone around his neck. Iggy suddenly remembered where he'd last seen them. Hammerhead had worn them at the Feast of Urks. "You're now the chief," said Iggy. Borg spread his hands modestly. "The elders felt it were for the best." "But you can't. Not while Hammerhead is still alive."
"Sadly, not for much longer. A great pity."
"Huh, huh. A great pity," laughed Snark. "You planned for this right from the start," said Iggy, clenching his fists. Borg's eyes flashed dangerously.
"Careful, little cub."
"Everyone knows you wanted Hammerhead out of the way so you could take over."
"Maybe you forget you're speaking to your chief."
"You'll never be my chief," cried Iggy. Borg glared at him icily for a few seconds, then turned to his guards.
"Auric, take these traitors to the snake pit."
"Yeah, Auric, to the snake pit." Snark grinned. Iggy felt strong arms imprisoning him. "Wait," he said, struggling to escape. "You can't do this."
"That's the thing when you're chief," drawled Borg. "You can do whatever you like."
"Listen," cried Iggy as they were dragged away. "We came to warn you. You're all in danger." Borg sighed heavily and raised a hand to bring them back.
"What danger?" he said.
"They're coming," said Iggy. "The No-Necks are coming." The colour drained from Borg's face. "Woe! Woe to the tribe of Urk!" cried the wailing widows, seizing the moment.
"Silence, you old crones!" thundered Borg. "What nonsense is this? What No-Necks?"
"They took us prisoner, but we managed to escape," said Iggy, talking fast. "But they won't give up. They're looking for the valley."
"Impossible," said Borg. "You're making it up."
"We see them," said Hubba.
"Then where are they now?"
"North of the river, on their way here," cried Iggy. "Woe!" wailed the widows, falling on their knees. "For tribe shall rise against tribe."
"Will you put a rock in it?"
roared Borg. Iggy explained what he knew. If Crack had any sense, he would follow the river south, which would eventually lead him to the valley and the Urk settlement. It was only a matter of time. By now the crowd had been swollen by men and women coming out of their caves. The words No-Neck, army, and what did he say would pass from one person to another. Panic was spreading like marmalade. Borg climbed onto a large boulder so he could be heard, and also because it made him look taller.
Men of Urk, he shouted, adding, and women, just in time. You all know me. I am Borg, son of Yorg, your new chief. Nobody cheered. There's no need to panic, Borg went on. Believe me, there's no army and no invasion. Never since the time of our fathers has no next come this far south. Chief! Chief! Borg was interrupted by a young Urk barging his way through the crowd. They're coming, he gasped. The no-necks are coming. Whoa! Wailed one of the widows. For the day of doom is... But she was cut off by a large clod of mud, landing a direct hit.